please welcome Bill Megalos.
Thank you. There are enough people here who know me who know that that's not all true. But it is a pleasure to be here. I have managed to put together a life that I really, really love, that involves traveling mostly in developing countries, which I really enjoy. And I would like to tell you a little bit about it tonight. I was going to start by reading the intro from my book called The Global Filmmaker, which doesn't exist yet, but the intro exists. But I'm not going to do that because I want to make sure that I get through everything I want to talk about. And if we have time at the end, I'll give you a little bit. But the reason I wanted to read it is it talks about one of the many amazing experiences I've had, and this one is waking up one morning at Lake Atitlan in Guatemala. I don't know if any of you have seen pictures of it. And going out for a run and then hearing a buzz in the sky. And all of a sudden, and waking up there because I arrived at night the night before and had no idea how beautiful this place was. And hearing this helicopter break the silence, and it's Muhammad Yunus, who I was working with at the time. And just being in these places and you know, how fortunate I've been and how all the foreign work that I do, I'm sure my life would be very fulfilling without it, but just how much it's informed all my decisions and how I really feel that we are just one big family, and with the breakdown of national borders and the way that we're destroying the economy, not the economy, well, the economy too, but the way that we're destroying the environment around the world, we are all going to kind of hang together that way. But so maybe I'll get to that a little bit later, but the first trip that I ever did as a foreign trip for work was in 1983. I got a chance to go to Bangladesh. And it was an amazing experience, and it's an experience I wish that everybody could have, to land in a culture. At that point in 1983, we weren't as connected as we are now, and Bangladesh really was off the grid. It had had the Brits come in there and colonize it a little bit, but it had been left alone for a long time. They'd had the Civil War where they broke away from India, from Pakistan, excuse me, and there was no foreign community there. And we were making films, what was called family planning in those years, and this was for the USAID, Agency for International Development, and I went as a DP, and I was there with a director, and we were the only, everybody else on the crew was Bangladeshi. And it was an amazing experience. They had a film ministry very like India at the time, and still do. All the films were dubbed. We decided that the things that we were making, which were little stories, kind of like PSAs, longish stories of identification, we decided we really needed to do sound to make this stuff sound real. And so that was one of the challenges. But we did a lot of training in that film. The only way we could make it work is we found the best photographer in the country, a guy named Anwar Hossain, who is now kind of a real legend there and is seen to be one of the fathers, the lions of the film industry there, and he's become a big DP. And I trained him as a director of photography on that job, and it was an amazing job, an amazing experience that I just wanted to return to again and again. We shot on film. Things were really different there. But this trip kind of ruined me for other work. And it ruined vacations for me. Because once you start working with people in another country, and you eat where they eat, and you go into their homes, and you see all that stuff, it's very hard to just go on vacation and realize that you're a mark, that you're going to a place where people know how to get the most money out of you, and it's just, once you see the world through those eyes, it's very hard to be a tourist, and much to my wife's unhappiness, I will say. And I think the longevity of my marriage probably has something to do with the fact that I'm gone half the time. So. Okay, so, but it does really help to be the sort of person who would rather visit a fishery than the Taj Mahal, who would rather go to a landfill, who would rather, look at an old factory or, something that is really off the beaten trail. And you have to I always have to remember to myself, I'll kind of talk about how things moved, how this developed, how my career developed into this, to the point where now I've filmed in 50 countries, and I'm off to India next week again. You do have to enjoy discomfort and shitty food and harsh conditions, and be able to operate without sleep, because a lot of times I'm going someplace and by the time I've gotten acclimated to the jet lag, it's pretty much time to come back. So a lot of it is learning to operate at, kind of learning to get yourself so that you can work when you're not at your optimal, when you're maybe a little sick or you're tired or you're dehydrated. And luckily, I'm old enough that I have learned how to do that over time, but learning good work habits. After this first trip in 1983 to Bangladesh, I had occasional foreign trips, mostly working as a cameraman for the BBC. I was lucky enough that I had worked with directors and producers who would take me, because we'd had good relations working in the States. Usually they would come to the States, we'd meet in the States, and maybe the film was shot mostly in the States, and there'd be a component in Japan, so that we'd go to Japan so it would have the same look, the same continuity. But the difference with those films, this was all shooting on film, was that those films, I had to wait for that call. I couldn't initiate a film like that. I couldn't bring about something like that. They were much more expensive. A lot of those films I did, I traveled through France and Spain doing things, also through the Middle East, Yemen, Oman, Jordan, into Israel. And those films very often they had to be scouted in advance. And there's no way I could ever mount a production like that. Those of you who have worked in film know that, just to shoot a 10-minute interview in 16 millimeter, it cost you about $400 by the time you were done, just buying the film, processing the film, making a work print, and just to do 10 minutes. And that was always beyond my means. But there was still enough of this work, and it was still thrilling and exciting, and I loved it. But then things happened in the 90s where a couple things happened at the same time. One of them was the advent of reality television really slowed down that documentary work. So that was kind of disappearing. But at the same time, we had the rise of tiny cameras like the VX1000, little cameras like this one here, and also especially NLEs that you could, all of a sudden we had the means of production, and all of a sudden I could actually go out and make a film by myself. And this started happening. I got fortunate in that someone recommended me for a film for a big NGO, a non-governmental organization called the Asian Development Bank, which is like the World Bank, but focusing on Asia. And managed to do a film, and that was shot on film. That was in the late 90s, where we went to 6 countries trying to make, it was an anniversary film. It was a pretty high-profile project for them, and I'll call it a corporate video, but it was shot on film, but a corporate video. And trying to show what the work they did. It was their 30th anniversary. And we chose very carefully 6 countries to play for all of Asia, trying to find facial types that we could, and those countries included, we went to Hong Kong, Nepal, India, Indonesia, Korea, and somewhere else. I'll figure it out. The Philippines. They're based in the Philippines. And it was just, it was astounding an experience, but it also started me working with NGOs. And here I found something to start replacing the work of the documentaries. I found, I hadn't really considered NGOs before and the work that they did, but it was an opportunity to meet remarkable people doing remarkable work and to learn about how the rest of the world works or doesn't work. And starting to make films about poverty reduction, global health, the health issues, education, the environment, the status of women, good governance. And it was a great opportunity for me that really opened this whole other world. And I'll tell you a little bit more about it. But like I said, the first couple of these films were kind of high budget. They were back with the old way of doing things, where film, big cameras, taking a lot of equipment through the countries, using carnets. But then, then I discovered Final Cut Pro around 2000, I think with Final Cut Pro 2.0. And for me, everything changed. I had been a cameraman before that, and as a production person, cameraman and directing, but I'd never dared to edit anything. And one of the things I learned from my years of doing production was that it's really about making the day. It's about, you're there, you're in Jordan, you're at Petra, you've got a certain amount of light, you've got to get this scene, you do it. And you find shortcuts, and you do whatever you have to do, you've got to come home with something. But once I started editing, I realized that this is a whole different part of my brain was growing and becoming, and I realized that there are no shortcuts in editing, no matter what you guys think. I mean, I found that I wasn't being honest if I wasn't looking at every frame of the footage. Fortunately, I learned that I was able to remember the footage. I was really, because I shot it myself. So I became like a one-man filmmaker, and that's really what I'm going to talk about a little bit more today. But I recognized that I could remember the footage, and it kind of helped. It helped me to pull takes. It helped me to, I actually would remember 2 months later, the next take, I think I got another take where I was a little bit wider, and I was shocked to see that. But the empowering quality of the empowerment of learning how to edit really did change my life in a lot of ways. And I also found that, and I'll get to this, I found that it was relatively easy to teach this too, especially with Final Cut. I don't think I would dare to try to teach anybody Avid, but I found I could teach Final Cut to anybody. But let me show you a little clip from one of the films that I did for the UN Development Program. Just a little bit of background. I know you're not supposed to make excuses for anything you're showing, but just to say, this is a half-hour film, and it has a certain pace in the half hour, and I didn't know which part of it to show you. It's a film about the Central Asian republics, and the Silk Road. It's basically about the Silk Road and reopening the Silk Road to try to bring economic growth and stability to these former Soviet republics, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan. Like they're called the Central Asian Republic, CARS. And so this was an amazing trip that I did over the course of 4 weeks. It was during that, we had to kind of sneak into Uzbekistan because it was when that massacre happened in Andaman. It was like a week after that. But so the section I'm going to show you is it looks a little bit like a travel log because there's a travel log section of it. But basically, the idea of the film was to promote cooperation between these countries, that once they stopped being part of the Soviet Union, all of a sudden a lot of their money had to go to arming themselves and creating borders where there had never been borders before, and just trying to. So this is the goal of this film, and it was shown in many countries. We made it. It has 7 languages in it. It's got English, Russian, Tajik, Kyrgyz. Some of them are similar. And there were 2 versions of it. One of them was in Russian, so all the subtitles were in Russian. and Russian voiceover, and the other one was in English, which I think we'll look at tonight. I did manage to get Leonard Nimoy to narrate it, which was really nice. And, you know, when you're doing things like this, you can get people to help you. You know, people do want to help, and he did offer to do this for free. I did pay him because I wanted to have a canceled check that had his name on it and his signature. But anyway, this is just, I'm just going to show you about a minute or so of this, just so you can kind of get the sense of the flow of it. And the reason I chose this film is this is the first film that I did in HD. I did it with the Sony Z1, so you'll see that it's interlaced. But it is the first film that I managed to do entirely by myself, you know, and it was a big film with a little camera like this, with no, you know, bringing it in under the border, nobody seeing it, and just, you know, and teaching my driver, the driver in each country how to hold the boom, and just doing the whole thing. I did have a co-producer on it who was who worked for the UN and the Asian Development Bank, who wrote it, and so all the copy is his. But and the one thing I did want to point out about this one little film is, this one little clip I'm going to show, is that when you're making a film like this, it's crucially important that you show people, that you really get into people's lives, and that you really show who these people are and what their life is like. And that was the ultimate thing that, so this film focuses on a number of lives, but this is just one little bit, and it's, here we go. There's been an intro before this, where a teaser where he showed all the people.
A mysterious fabric, highly coveted by the West, but whose secrets were known only to the Chinese, gave its name to the trade routes between the Orient and Europe, the Silk Road. For 1,000 years from the 2nd century BC, bazaars, which were centers of entertainment as well as commerce, created great cities of wealth and culture throughout Central Asia. Empires rose and fell, but the caravans that crisscrossed the region continued to bring prosperity for a simple reason. Traders were allowed to travel freely in a vast area where the main barriers were icy mountain passes or burning deserts. Mongol invasions and the opening of sea routes led to a decline in the overland trade, but Samarkand prospered once more when Tamerlane made it the jewel of his empire, and his grandson, Ulugh Bek, helped make the city a seat of learning and culture as well as commerce. Today, in the shadow of Tamerlane's mausoleum, Karim, his father, and his brothers are proud of a craft that has been handed down through the generations. Ulmas Bozorov is patriarch of the clan.
Мы шапочники. Мы занимаемся изготовлением шапки. Мы этим ремеслом занимаемся более 200 лет. Наши деды и прадеды продукцию реализовали в Афганистан, Иран. На верблюдах возили. Тогда границ не было. Вот по традиции мои дети тоже занимаются изготовлением шапки. Мимо этого мы еще занимаемся изготовлением меховых изделий, музыкальными инструментами.
Today, the Bozorovs sell their hats through traders or to visitors in their shop.
Мы сотрудничаем со многими странами, особенно с Россией. Это лиса, привезенная из России. Это чернобурка российская. Это норка китайская. В Китае тоже привозим. Шьем, комбинируем с каракуль самаркандский, норка китайская. Многие политики России сейчас одевают вот такие формовки. Модно. Сюда приезжают туристы из разных стран. Из Германии, из Японии, из Европы. Шьем, покупают эти шапки.
The elder Bozorov is also a music lover who makes instruments as a sideline. He even finds time to help boys from a nearby school during a rehearsal of a musical. He has used his passion to compose a song for his craft.
I'm going to stop this right here, just because I want to show you other clips. So you know, this film goes on to talk about, there's a lot of there's sex workers in it, it's the AIDS problem, the drugs on the border. I mean, it covers a lot bigger things than this friendly start. But, you know, it's about trading back and forth. So, you know, one of the things that happened, you know, talking about working as a one-man thing, you really do have to work on your skill sets. For me, it was very fortunate that I had started out as a cameraman, so I really didn't have to worry about that. I could really shoot, and I also am left-eyed, which I think helps me bifurcate, that I can actually shoot and keep one part of my brain. You know, we're right-eyed or left-eyed, and I do notice that I've noticed this difference in people, and I'm able to shoot and still think about the other shots that I need and to think about the questions that I have to ask. But you can learn a lot of these skills. I mean, it is very hard if you can't shoot if you're constantly struggling with the technical part of the camera, it is harder to do this kind of work. Because again, it's really about the relationship that you have with people and thinking about, especially a job like this, you don't know what the final script's going to be like. How do you capture everything that you're going to need when you're out there? So there's a steep learning curve there. But I did learn, what really became wonderful to me was, and you know what, well, let me just back up 1 second. One of the reasons of being trying to do it as a single person is, a lot of this stuff, you're in a Land Cruiser traveling. Or this film, we traveled like 4,000 miles to do this film. And adding an extra person means adding another Land Cruiser. There's only a certain amount of people you can fit in a vehicle. But the next thing I want to talk about, and I know I'm kind of jumping to it, is I was able to start doing workshops, originally from the main photographic workshops, the International Film and Television workshops. I taught there for many years, where I could give workshops to NGOs, and I could give workshops to young, well, usually young, emerging filmmakers, let's say, and hook them up with an NGO. So what would happen is, I would go to Uganda, people would come to Uganda to take this workshop, I would find Ugandan NGOs and hook a filmmaker up with the NGO. So what would happen is, the NGO would get a free film in the course of this 10 days or 2 weeks, and the filmmaker would get access to people that it would take them months and years and maybe never get access to otherwise. And then at the end of this time, they had a reel. And one of my former students has gone on to make many films for NGOs, and the first film that she made during this workshop, they made 1,200 copies of, distributed all over. That was when there were these things called DVDs, and anyway, it was not that long ago. I just want to show a couple of things from a recent workshop that I did in Laos. Last year, I did a workshop for the State Department. Laos is a communist country. There's state television has no advertising on it. There is one commercial television station now. So there's no tradition of commercial and making advertising and making short messages. And so it was decided to take these filmmakers and train them into making PSAs and public service announcements, that is, okay, message films. It is a communist country. It was very restricted what we could make the PSAs on. It was decided that it would be nutrition. Even the environment was too touchy, because in a developing country, the environmental needs of the country go against what people determine to be the growth needs and creating jobs. So we ended up there were some traditional problems with nutrition in Laos. One of the things they do is they're very afraid of colostrum, which is the first milk that comes out of the mother. They think it's unhealthy and poisonous. So they separate the mother from the child right away. And the mother is put on these things called hotbeds, which are coals under the bed too. And they also have tribal things where you're not allowed to eat the food of your tribe, of your clan. So if your clan is a pig, you can't eat that meat. So what we did is I gathered a bunch of material and distilled it down to a few pages that I could give to the students. Now these students, some of them had made films before, but a lot of them hadn't. And we had kind of these cheat sheets, and what I did is I brought in people from the World Food Program, which is part of the UN, to act as clients. And so we really had this situation where it really was like a commercial, just like creating advertising with an agency. And the students had never done anything like ideation before. But we came up with these ideas of these stories, not so much the stories we were going to tell, but the ideas, the concepts that we were selling, and then discussed who the audience was going to be. A lot of these people had never seen television before, or they were living in villages and they were going to be seeing the commercials on an iPad. People were going to bring them around on an iPad. They were illiterate. So how do you tell the story without graphics? And who is your audience? Who wants to hear it? So basically, I want to show you just a couple 1-minute clips here. The two big messages we had was exclusive breastfeeding is crucial for 2 years. As long as, don't start feeding the child other foods, don't start giving them rice, don't start giving them water. As long as the child is, if the mother is eating healthily, everything the child needs, it comes through this breastfeeding. And of course, the problem with nutrition is if a child starts being malnourished at an early age, they never catch up. They lose IQ, they get stunted, and they are tired the rest of their lives. You see this around. So that was one of the points, and the other one was having a balanced diet. And actually, we even made one of the films we made, which is a longer one, is how to protect your food when you cook, when you prepare it. For instance, if you are cutting green beans, wash them before you cut the ends off of them, because the nutrients go out if you cut the ends off and then wash them. And how long do you cook things, and when do you put them in? So let's look at one of these. They used all different types of ways of telling the story. One guy, let's look at this one. This one was, this guy decided that he was going to
มี
make...
ความสุขและหักแม่ของค่อยหลาย
Now the subtitles are for
เมื่อ
us.
ทำอีกที่ค่อยเกิด แม่ของค่อยเอานมจากเต้าให้ค่อยกินรอด ตอนนั้นค่อยยังกินน้ำบ่ได้เทื่อ ตอนค่อยได้1 เดือน ค่อยกินแต่นมจากเต้าของแม่ ค่อยยังกินนมฝุ่นบ่ได้ ตอนค่อยได้2 เดือน ค่อยกินแต่นมจากเต้าของแม่ ค่อยกินน้ำมะเกี้ยงบ่ได้เทื่อ ตอนค่อยได้3 เดือน ค่อยกินแต่นมจากเต้าของแม่ ค่อยยังกินข้าวต้มบ่ได้ ตอนค่อยได้4 เดือน ค่อยยังได้กินนมจากเต้าของแม่อยู่ ค่อยก็ยังกินหมากกล้วยบดบ่ได้เทื่อ ตอนค่อยได้5 เดือน ค่อยยังมากินนมจากเต้าของแม่อยู่ ค่อยยังกินหมากอึบบดบ่ได้เทื่อ ตอนนี้ค่อยได้6 เดือนแล้ว แต่ค่อยก็ยังมากินนมจากเต้าของแม่อยู่ และค่อยก็ได้เริ่มกินอาหารอ่อนๆแล้ว ค่อยหักแม่ของค่อยที่สุดในโลกเลยย้อนแม่เอานมจากเต้าให้ค่อยกินตั้งแต่มื้อเกิดจนค่อยอายุ6 เดือน แม่ของเจ้าเด็กผู้ใจเจ้าคือกับแม่ของค่อยบ่
So, one of the things I noticed just thinking about these recently is there's an awful lot of the children talking in these films. We ended up making 11 films or so. And most of them, the children are talking. I mean, the babies are talking. The way we got that baby was we had one of the students in the class was an actress, and she made her voice high. But then we used the plug-in and made it even higher and more baby-like.
Make sure you get to the clips. You got a 5-minute warning.
Okay, 5-minute warnings. Okay. All right, well, I'll show one more clip, and then I'll do just one more quick thing. Which one do we want to see? Yeah, because you want to see a little bit of the countryside, right? That's only, we need just one clip here. One of them was, there's a lot of ethnic groups there. So some of the films were made in the ethnic language, like this one. Not Lao, but in the local tribal language. And this was something, we knew they couldn't read this, but this is something they're trying to introduce into this country, essentially the food type pyramid.
paparanyam amya. Sang ma neo gi là YouTuber. Bé dễ nông miệng ấm bươn. Cả phó dễ có nông ấm lỡ chi bự sang ma neo gi. Ăn mạ bự ụ có bươn rắp sànอาหารตะลุดบรมบูมา
สังมาปลาโลดเจ้ามาเบอร์ก้นก็จิเบิ้นรับสารอาหารปลาโลดจากอมบูมา
So this was a great experience. I talk about one more aspect of the kind of international work I like to do. Another thing that is new is, of course, Kickstarter. It's another way to get there. Been making a film for the last, I'm the DP, there's a producer-director guy named Nick Spark, a film about a remarkable woman who was born with no arms. Her name is Jessica Cox. Some of you might have heard of her. She's a pilot. She's in the Guinness Book of World Records. She flies a plane. And we've been following her for about 18 months, and she is an advocate for increased opportunities for people with disabilities. Well, in the developing world, in many countries, and we went to Ethiopia. We raised the money on Kickstarter. She went to Ethiopia to advocate for opportunities for disabilities. In a place like Ethiopia, what happens is when a child is born with a disability, it's considered a curse on the mother. The mother has sinned, and the child is very often not allowed to go to school and has absolutely no opportunities. So we went to this country, and in the course of a couple of days, we started in Addis, and we got her on television, and she became a national star. People would walk down the streets saying, "We love you, Jessica." It happened all in front of us. And so I just want to, that was an amazing opportunity, and to move, I don't think the country will ever be the same. I just want to show you a little bit from that, and then that'll be it. This is not cut. I just slapped this together. The film is not cut yet. But I just wanted you to see some of it.
Thank you for lending me your shirt.
በጣም አመሰግናችኋለሁ። አመሰግናለሁ ሸሚዝህን ስላዋስከኝ።
Any other questions?
ገላዋን ስትታጠብ እንጂ ስታሽንጎር ፊቷ ስትታጠብ የምበላው ነገር የምታበስለው እንዴት ነው?
How do you take shower and how do you eat?
Okay, when it comes to taking a shower, I actually sit down like I'm sitting here, and I put shampoo on my right foot, squeeze it on my right foot, shampoo my hair, squeeze more shampoo on the left foot, shampoo that side, and I wash my body by using my feet just like your hands, and I stand up and rinse off.
እንዳለችው
And I truly believe that disability does not mean inability.
እኔ በትክክል አምናለሁ አካል ጉዳተኝነት አለመቻል አይደለም።
And when it came time to be an adult, the question of whether I would be married came up. Who would marry someone without arms?
መጣ ማን ነው እኔን ሊያገባኝ የሚችለው ብዬ ውስጥ
And I hope that I could find someone who saw me for me and not for my disability.
ተስፋ ነበረኝ አንድ ሰው እንደማገኝ እኔን ብቻ የሚያይ አካል ጉዳቴን ሳይሆን እኔነቴን ብቻ የሚያይ ሰው እንደማገኝ ተስፋ ነበረኝ።
And guess what? He's right here.
ያው እዚህ ጋር የምታዩት እሱ ነው ገምቱት።
I'll introduce you to my husband, Patrick.
ይሄ ባለቤቴ
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. I hope I didn't go over too much.